It is day 9 of Bookmas, and today I'm going to start talking a little bit more about kind of wrap up things. So the topic for today is going to be my favorite fantasy series or series that I really liked from this year. Hey everyone, my name is Amanda and I'm the Fun Size Reader, and I read a lot of fantasy. You probably found my channel because you were either looking for romances and rom-coms or fantasy and fantasy romance, because that's pretty much all I read. Last year, I was pretty disappointed in the amount of fantasy that I read. I don't know why. I literally tried to figure out why when I was doing all my wrap-up videos from last year, and I could not pinpoint a reason. I really kind of struggled with all of the ranking videos that I did at the end of the year. But this year, I have read so much fantasy, so much more compared to last year. When I was thinking about my favorite fantasy series of the year, I had quite a few to choose from. I'm going to give you all a little caveat to this video. I suck at finishing series. Okay, I said it. This is one of my toxic traits as a reader. I suck at finishing series. I can keep up with a series if I start it and then I read the books along the way. But I am very opposite to so many people who say that they will sit and wait for a series to be finished before they start reading it. I literally do the exact opposite. I will start a series with the first book and then read them as they go. And that's how I finish a series. I tend to fall off the wagon a little bit if I start a series that is finished and I have to read the whole thing straight through. I will never read the whole thing straight through. I'm not kidding. I will always take breaks in between books. I don't know why. It's just the way that my brain works when it comes to staying in a fantasy world. I cannot stay in one world for too long. I have to break it up. I have to use the palate cleansers. If you don't know what a palate cleanser is, I love using this term palate cleanser, especially when it comes to fantasy series. It is a book that breaks up, gets you out of, lets you escape from the depth of the fantasy world that you were just in. What I usually recommend as palate cleansers are real world rom-coms. So that's a lot of times why I read both. I read heavily both because I read a fantasy, I need a rom-com. I read a couple rom-coms, and I need a fantasy. It's kind of a trade-off back and forth. But I really need palate cleansers in the middle of series. Otherwise, I feel like I just get too drawn in. Maybe I get bored. I don't know, but it tends to make the series kind of drop off for me. So I have to break it up. I started 29 series this year. Started 29 series, and I am the worst at going through and finishing all of them. So my shelves are full of unfinished series because I just suck at it. Okay, it is a toxic trait. I hate myself for it. But yeah, 29. Not all of them were fantasy. A lot of them are rom-com series, but that's a lot. It's a lot for me to finish. A lot of these series that I am recommending, I am not finished with. I may have started it this year, or I'm continuing reading it because the next one in the series came out. But I wanted to bring you a list of things that I have really enjoyed fantasy-wise this year so that you have these series to add to your TBR. So let's start with the series that I'm continuing. So these are fantasy series that I love, that I would recommend, that I have continued reading as the books have been released. First is A Light in the Flame. This one came out the most recently, and I cannot give up Daddy Niktos. He is amazing. He is so much better for me personally, I feel, than the male main character in her other series from Blood and Ash. Nothing against Castile, but Niktos is better. So if you have not read the Flesh and Fire series, the first book is A Shadow in the Ember. I definitely recommend it. I know they're long, but this series is just so well constructed. And I would argue that it makes you understand the world way, way better. So much less confusing, such addicting plot, characters that you truly care for, and so many emotions. Next is Defend the Dawn by Bridget Kemmerer. This is book 2 in the Defy the Night series. I loved Defy the Night last year, so when Defend the Dawn came out, I was pre-ordering it. It was book club. We were reading it. I was in. This one I didn't love as much as the first one. I didn't love as much, but I still really, really liked it. And the ending made me want the next book now. Like, I need to know what happens. And I love the male main character in this book. Korik is my favorite. He is like my idea of fantasy morally gray, and I just love him. I need to find out what happens. And of course, I am continuing the Crescent City series. Hunt is bae, okay? Hunt is bae. I love Reese. I love Cassian. Everybody loves Az, but like, you can have him. That's okay. You can have him. But I love Hunt. And so there was no way that I wasn't going to read this book. Crescent City is my favorite of her series. Now, it is incomplete. I am reading this as it's going, so I am able to keep up with it. That's how I've read the entire ACOTAR series. I had to wait for every single one of them and the next one that she is planned, but this one's coming first. That's how it's been with Crescent City. I read the first one, read the second one, anxiously waiting the third, which we are going to get before the next one after Silver Flames in the ACOTAR series. So I will be following those series, but this is a must. Crescent City is a must, but only in the correct order. Go watch my Sarah J. Maas order video if you need to know. Now I'm going to do this series that I really, really loved that I started this year. There's a lot of different reasons why I loved them. Either I was freaking addicted to them and I couldn't stop reading them, or they were just so entertaining. They may not have been like the greatest writing or the greatest plot lines, but I still loved the series because it was exactly what I wanted in just a bingeable read. I have not finished any of these series, either because the series are not completed or it's just my MO. I at least wanted to give you guys the list of ones that I really loved. Number 1 on that list, and a series that I literally recommend to everybody who reads fantasy and loves spicy fantasy and fae and shifters and romance and forbidden romance and just everything. It has everything we want. Is Zodiac Academy. This is like the only series that I have caught up to. I started it at the end of last year, I think. I can't remember if I read the first one technically last year and then the second one this year, or if it like bled over, but I started it. I am caught up. I am waiting for number 8 to come next week, and I am anxiously now waiting number 9, which I'm going to have to wait a long time for. But I literally recommend this to everyone who reads fantasy and loves fantasy books. I love them. I love the characters. I love the plot, even though it rips my heart out. I warn everyone when I recommend this that it will give you lots of emotions. It will take up so much of your time, but it is so worth it if you love that addictive read. So please go read Zodiac Academy. Please, for me, please, please. Another series that I really loved, but I have not yet finished. I've read the first 4, but I still need to read 5 and 6, is Savage Lands. This was so much fun to read with book club. Like, a ton of us were reading it at the same time. So it was really fun to talk and chat as I was doing my reviews. This was just enjoyable. Like, the first one was by far my favorite. I think it was really unique, and it's kind of dystopian mixed with fae, and it's just so addicting. It's a super slow burn. Super slow. I have to warn people of that. If you're expecting spice in the first book and maybe the second one, just be prepared. You might not get it. but it's really enjoyable. I did find that the series started to get a little bit repetitive. I wish that it was a little deeper and there was more plot and more places and scenes that they went to. And it kind of started to feel a little back and forth, which is why I took a little break from it. But I do still want to know what happens. I want to finish out the series, and I do highly recommend this one. I think it's really fun. Another one that I started very recently that I am addicted to, and I have not gotten to continue to read them because I've had other things that I've had to read first, is the Bonds That Tie series, starting with Broken Bonds. I had friends recommend this to me. I've seen it in a couple different places online, and I was like, I'm going to give it a chance. It's a completed series. I really hope I can stick to it and read the whole series and finish the whole series because it is finished. But oh my God, it's addicting. Like, this is a reverse harem. Why choose? It is fantasy. It is slow burn. It is enemies to lovers. It is all the things that I love. And it is on Kindle Unlimited. So it is so easy to just queue it up and read the next one. But I always try to stop and record my video review so I don't put any spoilers out there, which is why it's taking me so long. But I've read the first two and I am still very interested and very entertained. Again, it's an addictive read and I really want to know what happens. I hope it gets a little deeper in the plot, but I do really love the relationship building. And I know my heart is going to be broken by some of these men. These next three series, I only have read the first book, either because the first book, it just came out this year, which all of them pretty much did, or last year. But I've only read the first one, and the second one either hasn't come out yet or just came out, and it's Bookmas, and I haven't gotten to it yet. The first one is Ledge by Stacey McKeown, and I love that this is already preset as a trilogy. That makes me so happy because I know it's planned, it's figured out, she knows what's going on, and I know I'm going to get a good 3 books. I really, really liked the first one. I thought it was super unique. The story was very different. It wasn't like anything that I've read before. The creatures and the magic and the fantasy were just refreshing, that it was different. It wasn't something that I felt like is redone often or that we're familiar with. It had a good romance in it. My biggest thing was that I didn't really connect as much as I could have or as I've done with other books, simply because I am a first-person narrative point of view person. Like, I like first person, and this is not told in first person. I feel like if it was, I may have been like all in, but just because I was a little bit out of the viewpoint, that's why I didn't connect to it as much as some others, but I really, really liked it, and I really, really want to see where it goes. It leaves off on a cliffhanger, so be warned, you're going to be waiting and anticipating like the rest of us. Another one was Untainted by Lillian T. James. I really liked this book. I was very surprised by this book. It was fated mates, but kind of enemies. There were tons of tropes in it. And the best part was that you knew that they were fated mates, but they didn't know that they were fated mates. So the whole time that you're reading this book, you're just like, oh, will this happen already? Will they figure it out? And it's just so much tension and so good. There's a one bed trope in there. There's a one horse trope in there. There's, touch her and die, she's mine, all of it. It's so good. The one thing that I did not like was the cover. I felt like didn't convey what the book actually was. I think it has more to do with what the series is planned, but not the book itself. There were some things kind of mentioned, but I was still a little confused. But I'm really excited to see what happens in the second one. I believe it is already available. I just have not queued it up yet. One of the last ones really took me by surprise. This is called the Immortal Orders series, and book 1 is Dark Knight Golden Dawn. And I started this one on a whim. One of my friends on Instagram was like, oh my God, this is my new book boyfriend. And I was like, okay, I need to find out who this is. So I started it and I started reading it, and it is a Pride and Prejudice retelling in a fantasy world with magic and with creatures. And it's just so good, you guys. It's so good. The second one came out. I was not expecting it to come out this quickly because it is a thicker book. Oh, it's so good. It's got Pride and Prejudice vibes. It's got Bridgerton vibes, but it's all in a fantasy world. I have no idea what's going to happen in the second book. We were kind of left off teased at the end of the first one. This is one of those books that I feel like more people need to know about. It's an indie book, extremely well written. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, or you can buy the hard copy, whichever you like. And I just loved the characters. I loved the main character. I loved the male main character. I loved the side characters. Just so good. Now, I read a ton more fantasy series than the ones that I have talked about today. I do have review videos on every single book that I read this year. I have fantasy playlists that you can check out. I will link them in the description down below. But I at least wanted to shout these out since these were the ones that have been keeping me up at night reading. Now that we did fantasy, it's time for rom coms. So make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are on, because tomorrow for Bookmas Day 10, we are doing my favorite rom com series. Thanks so much for chatting today. Don't forget, you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Fun Size Reader. See you guys next time.